Do you find yourself wanting things to be a certain way in your life, in your week, in your day? Wanting things to go according to your plan, but things just end up being completely different than what you planned? Do things appear to be stacking up against you? In this episode, we're going to talk about how you can change your attitude and what are some things that you can do to shift the way that you see things when things aren't going according to plan. Welcome, my friends, to another episode from Inside Treasures. My name is Phoebus, and I love to challenge myself and those around me for the purpose of growth. This podcast is about helping you to heal, change, and grow. As my friend Simon Sinek said, we don't learn much when everything goes right. We learn the most when things go wrong. But this is something we often forget. When things are going wrong, we begin going into a spiral, and everything that we do take us a step further down where we don't want to be. Instead, there's a lot that we can learn when things go wrong. So let me tell you a little bit about my week this week. This week, I had a certain vision about how things would work out, how my plan would work out, the kind of things that I would be doing. But then as I progressed through my week, I started noticing that there was a certain discomfort. I was feeling certain things that things were just not going according to plan. But it wasn't only that. It was how I was perceiving it, the kind of meaning that I was giving it. What I realized through this process was that I had this perfectionistic view on my mind, this picture that things should only be this way, and if they're not this way, then it's off, then they're wrong, then there hasn't been anything beneficial for me, like nothing is working out, so my week is not really going the way that I planned it, the way that I had it in my head. And that started to build frustration. It started to make me feel judgmental about myself. The key here to understand from this black and white thinking of things being perfect or not perfect. And when things aren't going to plan for me, what do I start to do? I start to reflect. Why reflection is so important? Because when we notice, and again it comes back to awareness, how we're feeling, how we're thinking, how these thoughts are spiraling down and guiding us into a path that we don't want to be walking on, then there's something that we need to do. And the best thing is to start with reflecting. So what are some things that we can do to shift our perspective? What are some things that we can do to change the meaning and change our attitude towards what's going on in our life? Again, this is a concept that it can be applied in all sorts of different areas in your life. But in this case, we're focusing on when things aren't going to plan. What is it that you can do? Your first step is to acknowledge it. Acknowledge the thoughts, acknowledge the emotions. Start checking your senses. Your perception and your perspective are giving you certain information. You're giving things a specific meaning. You have a picture, a perfectionistic picture of how things should be. And when those things don't match that perfect picture, it's either black or white. We forget all the gray shades. So the trick here is to start noticing, has there been any progress? Maybe not today, maybe not this week, but has there been any progress in general? Start noticing the gray shades in between. Are you better off than where you were before? Try to start and looking at your achievements and your progress and the things that you've actually managed to do versus the things that you haven't managed to do. It might not be fully what you expect, but you'll start to notice certain shades of gray which move you away, whether this is black or white, whether this is perfect or imperfect. A frame of mind to start from is that, is this an expectation realistic or a perfectionistic? Because it starts and it stems for the expectation we have for things. I've made a plan and I expect that plan to go as I planned it. But this is not happening, so this is causing me certain emotions. It can be judgmental, frustration again, or it can be something else for you. It might make you feel sad, it might make you feel angry. It really depends on what it is and what you're dealing with. So the first step is to acknowledge it. A second step to take is to accept it. The only way to move on is by accepting things. Accepting doesn't mean we're choosing to stay where we are. It's just giving space for things to be, giving us space to feel compassionate about ourselves, to figure things out, and give that space in order for us to be able to reflect, to be able to open up and say, well, this is what has been happening, and I accept that that has been happening. And it starts with a fundamental expectation that things will not always go according to plan. I know that you know that, and I know that, but when we're going into our day-to-day life, we fall into that trap of thinking things are going to go according to plan. I know it, you know it. But realizing it in the moment, right now, realizing it when we go through it, that's what makes the difference. That's what makes the distinction. It's not only the ideas coming in, but it's also how we use them when they matter the most. So remembering that I'm having this expectation that things should be perfect, things should go my way. That expectation shows that we are in a black and white frame of mind. And this kind of thinking keeps us stuck. Realizing that can help us escape, can help us move on, can help us acknowledging, feel more compassionate towards our circumstances, towards what we're going through. So by accepting it, we'll learn to move on. The next step you can take is to learn something from it. I keep coming back to this concept whenever you're going through difficulties. These are signs that you can learn something from it. I can learn something from my difficulties. It's a sign telling us that there is friction here. There's something that needs adjustment. There's something that needs to change. And usually that change belongs to the sphere of attitude, belongs to the sphere of perspective, the way we see things, the angle we look at things, and what kind of meaning we give them. So what's causing this? But remember one thing, don't get stuck here. Learning is an important step, but it's not our final step. It's not our final destination. So make it quick. What can I learn from this? You can go back and still think, what can I learn? What can I learn? But we have to move on beyond that. Take the first thing that comes into mind and say, right, I can learn this. Great. For example, I've been having this perfectionistic view of how the week should go. What can I learn from this? I can learn that I can take a different approach, a different perspective, and remember that things aren't always black and white. Things will not always go the way that I want them to go, and that is fine. And I can take that learning and apply it in the future as well. So then we can be grateful for the learning, grateful for the awareness, grateful for the compassion and acceptance we give in ourselves. And then to also, once we're noticing the progress, to be grateful about the progress that we've already made. And lastly, it's about how do we get out of this? Identifying what are the kinds of steps that we need to take that will build the momentum to the direction where we want things to go, not so that they match that perfectionistic view that we have, but just so that we move a step closer to where we want things to be. Acknowledging, accepting, learning, being grateful, and identifying the action that we need to take. These are the steps to help us shift our perspective, change our attitude, and move things closer to our plan, closer to the way we want things to go. Remember, when things aren't going according to your plan, instead of feeling frustrated, resentful, judgmental towards yourself, towards society, towards other people, whatever it is, instead of blaming and giving away your control, take back that control. Acknowledge what's going on. Reflect in the process of it. Accept it. Learn from it. Let go of the perfectionistic view of the present, of the future, that black and white thinking that limits us, that instead of empowering us and fueling us and propelling us to go towards where we want to go, it's actually pushing us backwards. And what's the way to actually fuel and support ourselves? Start by accepting it. Start by learning. Start by being grateful for the things that we learn from the things that we're going through. And again, instead of being judgmental, we can be more understanding, more compassionate towards ourselves. That's part of acceptance. That's part of loving. That's part of loving ourselves and loving what's happening right here, right now. Because our tendency is to run away, it's to oppose, it's to resent, it's to fight. And this kind of attitude, sometimes they can be helpful, but usually they're detrimental to our success. They're detrimental to our progress. Because every single thing that we meet through every day is an opportunity to learn. It's an opportunity to grow. And if we get stuck into this is how things should be, but this is not how things are, then we're not really learning much. Then we're not really growing much. We're staying stuck. And that's why we need to also identify the kind of actions that we can take, the kind of shift in perspective. How could I look at this differently? What kind of attitude can I assume that will help me, that will support me, that will show love to myself and to those around me? So when things don't go according to plan, I can devise a new plan. I can adapt my plan. I can find a new path that will lead me to my plan, that will lead me to my success, to my end goal, whatever that is for you. When we see it for what it is, then we have the ability to step back, take a step back, see things from afar, try to be a little bit more objective through our subjective reality. How do we do that? By assuming different perspectives. by seeing things a different way, by thinking, by feeling, by experiencing life as it comes, the way that it comes. We learn. Wave after wave after wave, we ride them. Instead of drowning, we learn to ride the waves that they're coming our way. We learn to balance on the surfboard. We learn to ride that wave down all the way to the beach. As my friend Michael Jordan said, if you run into a wall, don't turn around and give up. Figure out a way of how to climb it. I'm here to help you heal, change, and grow. If there's something that resonated with you, something that you need help with, give me a shout at podcast@insidetreasures.com. Thank you everybody for listening to this episode. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe and follow. If this content is delivering value to you, it is meaningful to you, please go to iTunes, go to Stitcher, and rate and review this podcast. If you can think of anyone within your circle that could benefit from this episode, please share this podcast with them. Sharing and reviewing can help build up this community to give as much value as possible and to help as many people as we can. Until next time, my friends, let peace guide your life, love guide your heart, and reason guide your thoughts.